Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, welcome to this episode. Today, joining me is Eric Myers, who is the owner at Myers Mushrooms in Wichita, Kansas. Eric is currently serving his country as a vehicle mechanic in the United States Air Force, but loves mushroom cultivation. He built a successful mushroom business in El Paso, Texas, sold it, and then moved to Wichita, Kansas, where he is building a new operation. He also sells mushroom supplies through his website. Welcome to the podcast, Eric.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah. So thank you first for your service to our country. I know that's it's never fun to be away from home and away from your family, but we definitely appreciate your commitment to the idea of freedom, I guess, is what I'm saying. Because I think we in the U.S. take it way too much for granted.
Yeah, it's not easy being out here, that's for sure. Being away from the family and my whole life, I'm separated out here, so it stinks,
Yeah.
but that's the military life, and I've been doing it for 13 years now.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Yep.
So talk to us a little bit about your background. How did you get started with farming and then into mushrooms?
So I've always been a tinkerer, and I always kind of built stuff and loved working with my hands and building all kinds of everything. And I'm a mechanic for the Air Force. That's what I do full time. And then I kind of had a green thumb growing up. My mother, encouraged me to get in the garden, and I was always, growing things. And then I went to El Paso in 2015. And when I got there, I kind of wanted to have a hobby that was more productive in a sense of making money.
Uh-huh.
So I looked into different options of, how can I make a decent amount of money in a small space? Because I only had a one-car garage at the time.
Yeah.
And I started looking around at like different methods of farming, and a lot of them need more space. And I realized that mushrooms, you can get pounds per square foot per week. So
Yeah.
I was looking into that, and I started growing mushrooms in my one-car garage on base, which is not advisable, but it's 8 feet away. But so I started doing that, and the thing that I noticed that there was nobody doing it in El Paso, so I had the whole market, so I just took off from there.
Very cool. So Then how many years did you run that before you sold that operation?
So I was there for 4 years. I got that same operation into a 2-car garage. We ended up buying a house on the other side of town, and ran that for 4 years. And then I sold that a couple months before I left to Andre Gutierrez, who's still running Myers Mushrooms El Paso.
Oh, very cool.
So he kept the name and all that. Yep.
And what would you say, did you mean to build something to sell, or was it just kind of like you were moving and it was a great opportunity, so you just decided to sell?
So I knew that I was going to leave there. It was a controlled tour. So it was a 4-year, not deployment, but it was a 4-year assignment.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was leaving there last year, so I kind of, one part of it was I built it with a sense of moving to begin with, because I was in the 1-car garage on base, and I knew that I was going to move the grow room. And then that just, easily trailed into moving it to the new location when I did sell it. So it wasn't really made with an intention to sell, but I kind of was in the back of my mind the whole time that, I could sell this operation. And more important than the operation is selling the actual clients and the training. That's the biggest part of it. So
yeah, you're selling a business system that basically makes money and makes a return on the investment that the person has into that business.
Exactly. And it's blooming right now. He's doing really well. The operation's better than it ever could have been, because we built it the way I should have from the beginning. It was basically the third time I built the same grow, so it was better in every way. And he's pushing over 100 pounds per week out of a 2-car garage, which is
wow,
awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Now, when you are set up on, farming with the grow, what does a typical day look like for you?
So currently, yeah, we're finishing up construction, but on the production end of it, typically you're going to have the bagging. Bagging is, filling the bags and folding them and loading them into the sterilizer. And then you have the lab work.
Yep.
And then you have putting the bags that have been colonizing for, 2 to 10 weeks into fruiting and cleaning the fruiting room and harvesting. And then the other
Okay.
part of it is doing sales. But every day you're harvesting. Every single day you're harvesting, and once a week or more, you're going to be rotating bags and doing lab work. So it's a weekly schedule of pretty much doing the same thing over and over with a little bit of variation, not a whole lot.
Gotcha. Yep. Now, how long after you harvest the mushrooms can they hold before you sell them?
So yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the species. So like say king oysters or shiitakes, they might be good for like 2 weeks and they'll still look fine. But some other varieties like say golden oysters or,
Yep.
pink oysters, they have a very short shelf life and they have to be sold within days. That's why I don't really like to grow those varieties. I'll grow more of the gray oyster or
Uh-huh.
elm oyster that have a longer shelf life. So yeah, it depends on the species really, but typically you want to get it to the chef or the client within a matter of 3 to 7 days at the most. That's really pushing it with 7 days because at that point they start to split and they start to grow out to where
Hmm.
the mycelium will grow out from the stems and it doesn't look as appealing. So.
Oh, so they're actually kind of like just blow apart the mushrooms and grow out so they can, is that where they're just going to release spores or?
So they are still alive. So what happens is that a lot of times the stems will start to grow mycelium out, like trying to reach out for new substrate. So
Ah,
they get all fuzzy looking on the stems when they've been stored for a long time. Sometimes they'll even fruit. If you leave them for long enough, the fruit bodies will actually put out new fruits. But that's really, when you're 2 or 3 weeks old. That's
yeah.
like when you should have thrown it out.
Yeah,
So
they're scrambling to get out the next generation of mushrooms.
exactly.
Yep. So
So
what do you feel are the missed opportunities in your industry right now? Because I know mushrooms are right now, I mean, they're hot. They're huge. There's
yep,
probably a 20,000 person Facebook group. Um,
yep.
what's the opportunities?
The opportunities, I mean, there are definitely some untapped markets out there, depending on where you're at the same time, some markets are saturated.
Okay.
So like the West Coast, from what I understand, is very saturated.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some cities in the Midwest that don't have mushroom farms or only have a couple small mushroom farms. There's
Yeah.
still plenty of opportunity for mushroom farmers out there to start a new operation or scale up and all that. But yeah, it's a growing industry for sure. Um, and I think it's going to get bigger with time. Absolutely. I mean, with education of the public and the restaurants and the chefs and all that, I think that learning about these gourmet mushrooms, that it'll definitely grow the entire industry bigger. And I think that there's lots of potential.
Now, are people just selling them fresh or people also drying them? What are value added products people can do with mushrooms?
Probably the leading value added product that I've seen would be the mushroom jerky for like
Oh,
oyster
interesting.
mushrooms. They'll cook them and dehydrate them with marinades and everything. Taken off pretty well. A couple people that I know are actually getting that certified to where it's a product that is certified to be shelf stable and all that through
Yep.
the local ag departments. So there a couple people are working on that I've seen, including Andre in Myers Mushrooms El Paso. He has one going through right now. And what else? The other thing is tinctures. So tinctures would be more for your medicinal, like reishi, lion's mane,
Uh-huh.
shiitake, and you would dehydrate them and then powder them and extract all the chemicals out of it and have it in a little tincture bottle. And that's a really good value added item that has a long shelf life and medicinal qualities. And it's small. Like you can
Yeah.
have a small briefcase can hold hundreds of these bottles that are worth $5 to $20 each. So it's
Yes.
like when I went to a mushroom festival, that's what I brought, with a bunch of them to sell because it was a compact item that I could take and,
Yeah.
and sell a lot of.
Are
So
people mixing some of those specialty tinctures with like CBD?
I don't know. I'm not allowed to do CBD. I don't really look into that too much. I'm not sure. So
Gotcha.
I'm sure if you wanted to, you could. I don't know what the benefits of it would be, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about low tech outdoor mushrooms. I saw you do a post about that. I think it was about the
Mhm.
Stropharia.
So I've done a lot of logs. I am
Okay.
familiar with King Stropharia. I want to try to make some beds. I have that and Bluet spore prints that I actually got. I had a couple people, because you can grow by culture,
Yep.
where you have spawn or a petri dish, or you can grow by the spore print. So I had a couple people send me the spore prints to where I'm going to take that and put it onto agar and grow it out of Stropharia and Bluet, and I'm going to try to play with those in the woods. I sit next to a 100-acre farm, and they have a big wooded area between me and the farm, and he's already given me clearance to go ahead and have fun in there. So I'm gonna be inoculating up some beds, and basically what you do is you'd take you know bags and bags of the sawdust that's already colonized, and then lay it out in layers like lasagna
Yep.
with mulch and manures and all that hay and whatever, and they'll colonize and keep growing year after year, especially if you keep top feeding it more mulch and more manures. But what I have been doing, so that's in my plans for this year and next year, I'm going to start doing that. But what I have been doing when I go home to New York, where my parents and my brother lives, I've been doing totems, and all that
Okay.
is just oak logs or hardwood logs. Basically anything that's not a pine works for the most part,
Yep.
and you just chainsaw them. You cut them into slices, and then you stack them just where you have maybe a 10-inch log with a little bit of sawdust spawn, and then another 10-inch log, and then sawdust spawn. You keep going like that. And my parents, I mean, my mom was saying she was getting like 5 to 7 pounds a week
Oh my
in the spring and
gosh.
the fall. Like she was giving them away, like tons of mushrooms. And if you've ever seen 7
Yeah.
pounds of mushrooms is a whole tray full. That's what
Yes.
you would deliver to a restaurant.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was loving that. And I just set my brother up with a bigger setup, which was low tech but a little bit automated, to where
Yep.
we did a single zone sprinkler system
Yep.
with
Yep.
little pop-up heads, and kept it pretty basic. That way he can kick it on a timer, so he doesn't have to worry about it too much, and still make sure the logs don't dry out, because that's one of the issues is if you have a
Yeah.
drought, the logs will dry out. So by sprinkling the area and getting the logs wet, it helps hydrate the logs and keep the humidity up in the area for any fruits that are fruiting.
Interesting. Now, do you have to like coat the sawdust areas with like wax to keep them wet, or just keep them wet from the sprinkler?
So for totems, you don't. Totems, you don't need to do any kind of wax or anything like that. If you were doing inoculation of a log where you drill holes
Yeah.
and then shove in either dowels or sawdust spawn with a little injection tool, yes, those you would typically put some kind of cheese wax or beeswax or some kind of wax over the holes, to keep bugs from eating it out and keep birds from picking it out too.
Yeah.
But for the totems, because they're so big, you just layer it in there, and it usually colonizes within a week, to where you can even pick up the top log and it'll pick up the whole stack, because
Oh,
it
wow.
fuses them together.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to use any kind of waxes or anything like that.
Is there a size limit to the size of logs you can use?
So if you're doing the like inoculating logs with
Yeah.
drilling and all that, you're talking anywhere from like 4 to maybe 6 inches, maybe 8 at the most. But
Yep.
totems, they can go big. I mean, the bigger you go with a totem, the longer it's going to last. So if you
Oh,
have an old
interesting.
2 foot stump that you want to inoculate, as long as you can manhandle that sucker around and build it, then
Yeah.
go at it. So it'll just last a lot longer, because there's more mass to it, and it's going to take longer for the mushrooms to eat through it and turn it all
Yeah.
into mush over the years.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Yep.
Could you actually put this, basically cut a tree down, block it up, and then stack it right back on its stump, or will that actually have them start to
No,
grow?
you could. You definitely could. And then the other benefit of, if the roots are still in the ground, is you have a wicking effect. As
Yeah.
long as it doesn't start growing out. Sometimes you cut a tree down and it'll start,
Yeah.
suckers will start popping up. But
Yeah.
if as long as it doesn't grow out, you actually the roots will rot, and then it'll wick. the moisture out of the ground, which will feed the mushroom. So it can actually be beneficial to do that.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. So I have friends that do pork in the woods, and
Okay.
sometimes they're thinning for that. And I'm wondering if you obviously want to cut the stump tall enough so that the
Hmm.
pigs couldn't get to the mushrooms and wouldn't cause, food safety issues. But that
Hmm.
could be interesting because they're only in there usually for a couple weeks out of the entire year.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, always trying to think about something new.
How to
uh,
apply things.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. Fascinating. So let's talk about just management of the business. There's
Hmm.
always endless tasks to be done, but I feel like a mushroom operation has more like set tasks. It's not like you're not dealing with as much weather, let's say, as you're like outside farming, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's much more of a weekly routine. And then you have, your monthly interval maintenance. A lot of it is just keeping everything up to where the equipment needs to be, air conditioners need to be cleaned, your fans need to be cleaned, your mister nozzles need to be cleaned.
Yeah.
A lot of cleaning, especially with mushrooms, because if you don't clean and you have some kind of trichoderma like the green um, mold breakout or any kind of disease in your fruiting room, it can be really bad.
Mm,
So cleanliness is very important with mushroom cultivation, especially in the laboratory too, where if you're not sweeping up at the end of the day after your lab session, well, now you have substrate on the floor. That's going to possibly be a vector for
yeah.
contaminations to grow, or even mice, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you run into that issue too. But yeah, you just got to be in that weekly grind kind of thing. And there is a little bit of seasonal. We do have a
Yeah.
little bit of seasonal in the fact of in the wintertime, you can run your fruiting room in the 50s and grow like the harder to grow or cooler weather mushrooms like king oyster or maitake. And then in the summertime, you might not grow them because you don't want to pay to air condition down to 50 degrees when you're blowing it all out the window, because the fact we got to keep the CO2 down. So
Yes.
the fruiting
Yes.
room is always having an exhaust blowing outside, and it gets really expensive when you're trying to cool down to the 50s. So that's the most seasonal variables that we really get is we might grow certain species during certain seasons because it favors the fruiting temperatures. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, but even still, you don't want to get the fruiting room anywhere above like 65, 70. 70 is really pushing it, because anything above that, your product quality isn't as good. And then also the shelf life isn't as good.
Yeah. So people that are growing outside, because I've seen people try some of these stuff outside in the summer, they're just
Hmm.
not going to have the quality. Stuff just won't fruit.
Well, there's bugs.
Yeah.
The bugs is one of the big ones, and then also you're a slave to the weather. So yes, you can build a microclimate, you can do shade cloth, you can do overhead misters and all of that. But at the end of the day, if it's freezing cold outside, they're not going to grow. Or if it's 110 degrees outside, they're going to grow so fast that they're going to over ripen within the
Yeah.
blink of an eye, and you're going to miss the prime point to pick them.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be almost like asparagus. We have to harvest 4 times a day.
exactly, exactly. I want to say like callow. When it's really hot out, he does have to harvest multiple times a day. So
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what systems did you set up? Did you have like SOPs or stuff like that? I mean, were you operating by yourself, or did you have people helping you with the operation?
So it started out with just me in El Paso, and then I ended up getting a deal with one of my. I spoke at one of the university there, and then she hooked me up with some students that were helping out. So
Yeah.
I started to have, that was like the first of me having like workers, and that was in El Paso. And then after training up Andre and Sergio, that was working with them a little bit. I got a little bit more experience working with them, and then coming to Wichita, my biggest learning experience with working with the crew was I was running a construction crew for 6 months. That's what it really was. It was I would get off of work and run a construction crew building this whole operation out. But once that was all done and we started to get into the groove, we just barely started to actually start producing mushrooms towards the end. But yeah, it was a challenge. It was a big challenge learning how to run the crew, how
Yeah.
to dish out tasks, and a lot of this is like it was the first time that I did a lot of it. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I've never installed a mini split before. I've never
Yeah.
epoxied floors or framed out a building. So it wasn't just picking the expert. It was, who do I think knows a little bit more than the other person to do X, Y, Z? All right, give them
Yeah.
that task, but it, so far the operation is looking awesome. We're like 90% done with it, and should be finishing it up when I get back and going full steam. But
Very
yeah,
cool.
it's been a learning lesson for sure, running the crew.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say the hardest thing that you've ever done as, running in business for yourself, as being a mushroom farmer? Talk to us about that.
The hardest thing, I would say, it's probably been building this operation out.
Yeah.
It's been never ending. Deadlines not met, and they're just deadlines that I made. But
Yeah.
so I was hoping to take 3 or 4 months, and 6 months later we're still working till midnight. But that was probably the biggest hurdle, was just things taking way too long, and it's just because you want to do it right. It's either
Yeah.
hack it or do it the right way and take a little bit longer. So we took the long route.
Yeah. What will be the capacity when it's done?
So the operation is a split operation. The whole, it's 2,400 square feet. 1,200 of it is for fresh mushroom production.
Okay.
I have a 270 square foot fruiting room. Incubation is around 440 square feet. So the incubation is twice as big as the fruiting room. I should be able to do single flush bags where the bags go in, give a harvest, get out. With that strategy, I should be able to push like 400 to 500 pounds a week out of it
Okay.
at full capacity. And then if needed, I can always expand. I have the backside of the building. I can put a shipping container back there if I need to expand fruiting or
Yeah.
incubation. And there's even a back lot. So I'm looking at buying the lot behind me, which is vacant, with potential to expand to that if needed. And then on top of that, so I said it was a split. So the other half of it is a spawn operation. So I'm starting to build, I'm going to finish up my spawn lab when I get back, and I'll have a capacity of about 160 spawn bags a day
Oh, wow.
production. So it should be, and that's if I'm going full time, but I'd basically have to quit my job to do that.
Yeah.
But we're shooting to probably shoot for about 120 bags a week, and go from there. And that should be able to hopefully be able to manage that while I'm still working for the Air Force.
Yeah.
And that'll be shipping nationwide, supplying farmers, everywhere.
Yeah.
So
So walk us through a little bit of that spawn process, because I know some people say, well, you can do it yourself, but I also see
okay.
people sell a lot of it online. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
bought obviously mine online when I got started here a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do people just not like the detail about it?
So spawn, the one of the things with spawn is that it's a whole different production.
Yeah.
If you are just growing mushrooms and you're a mushroom farmer, a lot of the biggest mushroom farms don't even make their own spawn. Like for instance,
Interesting.
Monterey Mushrooms, which
Yep.
is they have one in Madisonville. They have Amisil. So Amisil is like the sister company to Monterey. Amisil is a separate building, separate company, like across the street from them, that makes spawn, and they give the spawn to Monterey Mushrooms. It's just a completely different level of cleanliness. Sure,
Ah,
anybody can make spawn in their kitchen, but it's not going to be 99.9% reliable, or it's not going
yeah.
to have the correct moisture content to where it might look good, but when you go to spawn it, half of the inoculation points die off, which is
Ah,
common, especially with like millet, which is very small compared to like milo,
yeah.
which is sorghum. So yeah, so when you get the really good spawn, like let's say you order like Amisil spawn, they make an oyster mushroom, was it 3015? That spawn is some of the best spawn on earth, because they have their sciences down, and they have like a top level clean room.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you can go to Etsy or whatever, eBay, and buy some spawn, and it's going to be questionable in the fact of, are you sure that culture is what they're selling it as? Is it clean?
Yeah.
Is the moisture content right? Is the vigor good? Is it going to actually pop off like it should? Or are you going to have to use twice as much spawn than to get the same effect?
Yeah.
So that's the difference with spawn, is it's a whole different ball game when it comes to mushroom production. And with your daily schedule, if you're just going to go in and just make sawdust bags, that's one production line. And then making spawn is a whole separate production line that you have to do
Gotcha.
cultures, agar plates. You got to make sure you're keeping them fresh, because you can't just pull an old culture out that's 3 months old and make spawn with it. You got to make a fresh one that's growing out new, so you can watch it to make sure that it's clean, and then inoculate. So then you got to soak your grains. You got to use different bags typically, because most people are growing in 10-pound bags, and you don't really want 10 pounds of spawn. So you got different bags on hand, and you really want to pressure cook your spawn.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people are just atmospheric sterilizing their sawdust bags. So
Yes.
it's a whole different beast. It really is. It's a whole different beast.
Gotcha. So the takeaway is don't buy your spawn off eBay or Etsy.
Don't buy your spawn off eBay or Etsy. Northspore.com, you can use promo Myers Mushrooms, and they give you 10% off. Northspore has been in the business for a long time. I don't know, I should know the date, but they've been in it for a while, and they're a reliable spawn provider. They've been providing me spawn for a while, so they're legit.
Awesome. And the other thing I see on the group once in a while, someone says, "Hey, I got mushroom seeds from China." And
oh yeah. So mushroom seeds is not a thing. They don't have seeds. A lot of times, it's just some scammy dude from Russia or China that wants to make a buck. And
that's hilarious. It's very funny to me that people would actually fall for that. But
yeah, and it's because they don't do the research first. They just they go, hey, I want to grow mushrooms, and they get some mushroom seeds, and that's not how we do it. So the best way is to get some spawn, or even get a grow kit. That's probably the best way if you want to get started, is go online and order a fruiting kit. Northspore sells them too, where it's just a sawdust block that's ready to fruit, and you just cut it open. And that's what I started with, a fruiting kit. And when I got that, I had intentions of cultivating it out and propagating it out. So before I fruited it, I transferred it onto some grain and did a grain to grain transfer to make more spawn out of it. So yeah, that's a good way to get started, and it's a quicker result. You're more likely to actually get mushrooms out of it than starting from scratch and doing everything, to where you're doing it from the beginning. Start with a kit and then go from there.
Absolutely. So let's talk about you're getting started in the mushroom business. Who are your mentors?
I'd say TR Davis is probably Earth Angel Mushrooms.
Yep.
He's one of my biggest mentors. He's the one mushroom farmer that I've hung out with the most. I've visited his farm probably like 4 or 5 times now, and stayed for a couple days usually. And he's really showed me, the biggest thing is to always think big.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself. That's kind of why, like, now I'm selling nationwide. I'm selling to all of North America with the bags and my equipment and all that. So it's, always think big. And he's been a big, just mentor for me. And he's a cool guy. He's an ex-Marine. So we got the veteran thing going for both of us, and we just click really well. So good dude. One of my best friends too. Great guy.
Very cool. So right now you're building out your new mushroom grow. Talk to us about kind of the things that you're doing different with this one, because you said you've done it now multiple times.
So I've done it a couple of times. The biggest thing with this one is that it's bigger, so not a 2-car garage. Yeah. So usually space constrictions are a pain in the butt. And then this time I'm building it, from the ground up. So I did all the electrical how it should be. No more running extension cords from here to there.
Yep.
And I zoned it all out with proper mini splits. So I have, 1 ton in the lab, a 2 ton in the fruiting, a 1.5 tons. Everything's how it should be when it comes for zoning it out. So I have proper climate control, and that's really important when it comes to cultivating mushrooms, to have proper climate control and airflow and all of that, circulation. And then what else? Just bigger. I mean, this is way bigger. And then I'm also for the first time, I'm going to be running an actual autoclave. So I have a 2 foot by 3 foot by 4 foot. That's the inside dimensions of the chamber.
Oh, wow.
Autoclave. And it's double door too. So I have that and a 15 horsepower boiler, which is 600,000 BTUs. So I got that, and I'll be firing those up hopefully this summer. And that'll be my first time running an autoclave, which will be very interesting. So That's a big advancement for my practices, and that'll be for the spawn is what that is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to get it all up and running. That's for sure. It's going to be a lot bigger, a lot more mushrooms, a lot more work. So I definitely have to get some employees this time,
Yeah.
without a doubt. But it should be interesting.
Yeah. Now, one thing you mentioned a little bit ago was like a shipping container. Do you see people
Mhm.
using those a lot?
Yeah, there's a lot of growers that use shipping containers. The reefer ones are the best because they're already insulated.
Yes.
Yeah, so reefer container, and just throw some air conditioning in there, throw some racks in there, and go to town. A lot of people just use them for fruiting. I've looked at doing, like, some people were asking me, how would you build a whole fruiting operation in one container. They're really not big enough, truthfully. You'd really want to have at least two 40-footers, if
Yeah.
you ask me, because there's too many different zones,
Yeah.
um, between lab and bagging and fruiting. So yeah, if you could get two of them, you can absolutely have a decent size operation. I mean, two of them would be about, I think it's around 400 square feet, which
Yeah.
is right around the minimum that I would recommend for a small commercial operation. Anything smaller than that, and you're really cramped.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously you just want fresh air intake as well to make sure the
For your
CO2.
fruiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the fruiting, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So the other thing I heard from somebody else about mushrooms I was talking to, I think we both know him, Adam, was just talking about how to make sure that you're not breathing the spores.
Yeah. So you want to wear a respirator. You want to wear a P100 respirator, and that'll capture everything around like zero point 0.3 microns or smaller, or I'm sorry, zero point 0.3 microns or bigger, which are the spores. I think they're around 0.5 microns.
Yep.
Depends on the species. But yeah, so you want to wear a respirator in there. The other issue that I run into more so than the mushroom spores is dealing with the powder of the substrate. So you're dumping all these pelletized materials, these
Uh,
sawdust,
yeah.
and that fine dust. It gets irritating in your lungs and on your skin and all of that. So especially hay or straw, rather, working with
Yeah.
straw is pretty gross stuff. So yeah, you want to wear a respirator whenever you're dealing with the powders, like bagging, or if you are in the fruiting room for a prolonged time. Now, if I go in there really quick and just I'm working for a minute or two, that's one thing. But if
Yeah.
I go in there and I'm harvesting for a half hour or an hour,
Yeah.
you definitely want to get a mask on there.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yep.
All right. And with that, I'd like to stop here and take a quick break. In a minute, we'll be
Okay.
back with Eric Myers from Myers Mushrooms. Special thanks to our podcast sponsor, Localine, for supporting the Thriving Farmer podcast. Localine is an easy-to-use e-commerce platform for farmers to build a website, sell online, and save time in order tracking and delivery. When we tried to sell online with our farm, it was so hard. And we even had a week where a mistyped email was sending orders out into cyberspace and resulted in very frustrated customers and a very late night for me in the wash and pack shed. With Localine, everyone is happy. Easy ordering interface for the customer. Robust back end that has all the features I always wanted in a farmer-oriented e-commerce platform, such as charge when the product ships, no tracking refunds on scraps of paper, easy ordering deadlines and drop location integration, and so much more. I was really blown away when I went through the platform. This week, they're offering Thriving Farmer podcast listeners a free premium feature valued at $300. Two of my favorite premium features are Advanced Inventory. With Advanced Inventory, this allows you to get really specific about the products you're offering and create multiple packaging and pricing options. The other premium feature I love is their QuickBooks integration. The dreaded tax season is rapidly approaching. With a Localine QuickBooks integration, you can rest assured that everything is in one place and you don't need to drown in loose leaf paperwork and sticky notes when you go to file. Plus, no one loves entering information twice. I love the once and done aspect of this one. To learn more and claim your free premium feature, you need to register at growingfarmers.localine.us. Even if you're not ready today, by registering at growingfarmers.localine.us, you can always come back and claim this offer, plus grab their free website designer today. All right, we are back with Eric Myers from Myers Mushrooms. Eric, tell us a little bit about your marketing. When you were running the mushroom farm in El Paso, how did you get in touch with your customers?
So I started the farmers market, and that was my primary means for the first couple markets, the first couple of weeks. And then from there was actually a restaurant around the corner, word of mouth. He heard about me and
Yep.
went from there. And then turned out that restaurant was tied to 2 other restaurants. And then that guy was all networked. And El Paso is a very small city. So once the word got out that there was a mushroom farmer, just about everybody knew, all the chefs talked to each other, worked really well. So yeah, that's how the marketing went. And then the sales and distribution, I'd like to share like how that went, because it's bloomed into something even better than when I left.
Yeah.
It's gotten better. So it started off with me and Mario and Andre, or it wasn't even, it was Jose, my other mushroom friend, who was growing shiitakes. So it started off with the 3 of us, and Mario was growing produce, and then I was growing oysters, and Jose was growing shiitake. And we started off kind of doing like a little co-op, to where we would rotate doing deliveries, and we would take turns messaging the chefs every week. Well, since I've left, it's now turned into 8 farmers and 13 chefs.
Wow.
And they're growing all kinds of, cayenne bravo radishes. There's one guy who just grows like 300 pounds of that. And there's one dude who does lettuces and microgreens and mushrooms, and they're all doing it as like one big co-op, to where it's just delivered by one person, and there's one invoice for all of these different farms, and everybody's happy because you don't have to go running around. There's not 13 people making deliveries every week. It's just one person, so it really helps you focus on farming and not selling.
Yeah. So did you just pool your products? Did the co-op take like a cut off the top to keep that going, or how did that work?
So when we were doing it, we were just taking turns. That's what we were doing. And then towards the end, we ended up just paying hourly wage we were paying to Mario to just go out and do the deliveries for us, and he was more than happy to do that. Yeah. So that worked out really well. I'm not sure how they're doing it currently, but that's how we were doing it, and it worked out really well. You pay somebody a couple dollars an hour or whatever it is to do the deliveries, and you can stay at home and farm more mushrooms and focus on production.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. Yeah, I wish more farmers would do that across the nation, because you're right. There's no sense in 16 farmers making 16 separate trips around the city.
Right. Yeah. And, you're talking about fuel usage, vehicle wear and tear, and just the most valuable thing of all, time. Like, you're always short-timed on getting tasks done on the farm. Wouldn't you rather have somebody come by, swing by, pick it up? And, that goes down to competition. Like, you don't make it competition. Make it to where you're working together. Work together to where you can have different crops that are not in competition with each other if possible, and just be friendly, like with local farmers. I'm very, very friendly, even with other oyster mushroom farmers in Wichita. I'll sell them blocks. I'll sell them spawn, because there's a huge market. There's more, there's not enough supply for the demand usually, especially once you tap into all the farmers markets and all of the supermarkets and all of the restaurants. There's not enough supply, more than likely. So there's no reason to be all stingy and competition.
Yeah. If you go into any Whole Foods, you will say there's a new market right there.
Right.
The problem is their food safety regulations and just product liability is just through the roof. Because we tried to sell to them when we were upstate New York. They asked us, and they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, let's get going with just some microgreens and stuff." And then it was like $5,000 just for the insurance,
for the umbrella insurance or whatever. It's like $1 million+ dollars. Yeah.
Well, it was,
and
like
they're going to want it refrigerated delivery and all of that. And we don't I plan on having that in the next year or two, but 90% of farmers don't have that, small farmers at least. So that's a big stop right there.
So what would you say the biggest mistake that beginning farmers make in the mushroom business?
Probably taking on too much to where they start growing all the different colors of the rainbow rather than just focusing on the ones that are easier to grow or yield more. So I would advise, if anybody's starting to get into this, is don't order 20 different types of spawn or the liquid cultures or whatever. Just stick with a gray oyster or a blue oyster, like a white oyster. And then maybe if you want to do shiitake, do some shiitake, because shiitake is actually really easy to grow, in a sense of it's all about incubation. Once you have it incubated, you just throw it in the fruiting room, and the fruiting room can be all kinds of whack and it'll still produce decent shiitake.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I would advise just sticking to a core of quality mushrooms. Stay away from your golden and your pinks. Although pinks are nice because they're very forgiving because they're so fast that you can spawn bags and they'll be raw. Everything will be wrong and contaminated, but it'll still fruit because
Okay.
it's so fast and vigorous. But when it comes to actually producing on a commercial level, I would advise to stay away from those um, because the short shelf life, as we mentioned before.
Yeah.
So pinks and golds, and they taste horrible if you ask me, but that's a personal opinion.
Okay, that's good
So
to know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
one thing, I'm thinking about when building your room, is there a downside to using wood because it can get like spores in it and then you can get contamination, or does it not really matter?
So you can use wood, but you're going to want to use the pressure treated lumber,
Okay.
and the mushrooms are not going to contact it. So it's not like growing in a raised bed. It's not like
Yeah.
growing in a raised bed where the soil is going to contact the chemicals. So yeah, you can use pressure treated lumber. And it typically doesn't contaminate. I mean, you're going to make sure that the grime stays off of it, and you should be fine. So, but for the actual fruiting room itself, and that would be more for the shelving, is what a lot of people use the pressure treated lumber for. For the actual room itself, you can use plastic, like poly walls, like a greenhouse,
Yeah.
or you can use roofing, like what mine is, metal roofing,
Yep.
or insulated panels. So there's a lot of options for building the fruiting room out of inert
Yeah.
items that are easy to clean and easy to wash and sanitize. So
Yes. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Very cool. So being in the Air Force, you get to travel a bit. Have you visited any interesting farms along the way?
yeah, so I actually just visited a farm in Cairo in Egypt. So
Okay.
I had a TDY to Cairo, and one of my patron supporters, Khalid, he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, when you're in Cairo, come meet me. We'll go check out some mushroom farms." So we hit up a farm that was just outside of Cairo,
Okay.
and it was very interesting. So these guys grow, I believe it's mulberry. They grow mulberry outside, and
Okay.
they keep them short in bushes, and then they use those branches. They'll break the branches off and put them in trays, and they grow silkworms on that. Okay, and that's what
Okay.
they do in the summertime. So they'll take the silkworms and extract the silk and sell that. And then when they're done with that, they have these branches that are now stripped of all the leaves because the worms ate it. The caterpillars ate all the leaves off of it.
Yeah.
They'll shred that down and sterilize it and grow mushrooms on it.
Oh,
and
wow.
and that, and it's in the same room. It's in the same room that they were doing the caterpillars in, because now it's in the fall time or in the winter time. It's too cold for the caterpillars, so they
Yeah.
convert it over to a mushroom farm in the winter time.
Oh,
And then
fascinating.
once those blocks are done, they send them out back and feed them to the worms. They have like a half-acre vermicompost set up, so
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh.
totally closed loop. They're really, I mean, if this farm was in the U.S., it would be toured all the time. It would, if he had a YouTube channel, everyone would
Yeah.
be watching it. So, but totally like closed loop or regenerative kind of agriculture. Um, he's been doing it for, like, I think he said 5 years or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, I have a video that I just put up about the vermicompost and about the farm. I didn't get to see the worms because it's wintertime right now, so I
Yep.
didn't get to see the worm part of it. But that was, they brought out some of the silk, like the bags of the silk little pods, and they were
Oh my
showing me that.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
it was really interesting. It was super super cool, and I'm happy we toured that particular farm. I don't think that I'm pretty sure there's not another farm in the world that's doing that. There might be, but
Yeah.
it's definitely one of the very few.
So that's a really good, I'm glad you brought that up because it's always something I thought about in the US that I feel like we are so single use for everything.
Oh, absolutely,
And so
absolutely.
I'm always
Mhm.
thinking, how can we do exactly what these people are doing? I mean, it's 4 crops stacked.
Yeah,
So do you know anyone in the US taking like old mushroom blocks and running worms through them? Is that something that's happening?
it's very. I'm sure that people are composting, but it's very common just to compost them. Typically, you would
Gotcha.
just pile them up and compost them and sell them. Some people even sell, like, "Hey, come to my house and pick up 100 blocks for $20 or $50 or whatever."
Yeah.
So not even composted, because they're so it's already crumbly. So all you do is just break it apart and put it in your soil, and it just breaks down immediately. You don't really need to
Yeah.
compost it a whole lot. I used to just till it into my beds when I used to farm in the backyard in El Paso. But yeah, there's lots of use of the compost. We're definitely not wasting it or throwing it out. There are some farms that throw it out because it becomes so excessive. Like you're talking a
Yeah.
dumpster full of it a week for some of the larger farms.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, not everybody's composting it and putting it to use, but they definitely should. It's definitely a beneficial, you
Yeah.
know, thing for gardeners and farmers that they can use it to
Yeah.
grow more crops with. So
Well, you know, when we
and you can feed it to pigs too. I
oh,
know that like
interesting.
the Masters mix ones where they're made of soybean hull.
Yeah.
It's soybean hull and sawdust, and then you have the mushroom one in there made more protein out of it, and it's like a protein rich block. You know, it's like a mushroom. So
Interesting.
I know people that feed it to pigs or chickens, and chickens will pick it apart and
Yeah.
eat all the seeds out of it. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
So when we actually farmed in upstate New York, we were about an
Hmm.
hour from Saratoga Springs, which, you know, has a racetrack and literally produces
Yep.
mountains of straw and horse manure.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
that straw and horse manure was shipped like 500 miles down to Pennsylvania, which is the mushroom
Hmm.
capital of the US. It's turned
Yep.
into compost, run through the mushrooms through it, and then actually was shipped back up, and we would buy it
Really?
by the tractor
Wow.
trailer load for our fields.
The mushroom compost. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes. It was
Yep.
incredible, just the, you know, just the how much trucking was involved.
Yeah, yeah. Opposed to just having a farm near
Yeah.
the Kent Square that would use it, but it's so much. I mean, you got to realize how much mushrooms they're growing. They're growing like 10,000 plus pounds of mushrooms like a day.
Yeah.
You know, it's insane.
Yeah.
Um, so that you got to think it for every mushroom, there's a hunk of compost that needs to be getting rid
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what are your favorite farming tools?
My favorite farming tool. Um, my favorite farming tool is probably the bagger that I invented
Uh-huh.
because it saves so much time. And a lot of mushroom farmers that are starting out or don't have the equipment, they'll spend so much time. And I was there too, shoveling sawdust back and forth and mixing
Uh-huh.
it by hand and then scooping into each bag by hand. Whereas this thing, you just step on a pedal and it just, and what it does is it's dispensing pelletized soybean hull and pelletized fuel pellets, the sawdust, and then water. And it's all using knife valves. So you step on the pedal and the knife valve switch, and it dumps all the measured content into the bag, and then it'll hydrate within 5 or 10 seconds, and then you fold and load it into the sterilizer. So it turned like back in the day before I even had any kind of mixing operation, and it was just a shovel and an IBC tote cut in half. It would
Yeah.
take me about an hour and a half to do, I think it was like 30 bags.
Yeah.
So, and then I made a mixer one out of an old Hobart meat grinder, and
Yep.
that got it down to 40 minutes. And now I'm doing 50 bags because I have a bigger sterilizer. I have I used to have an 85 gallon. Now I have a
Yep.
110 gallon sterilizer.
Okay. Yep.
So I'm doing 50 bags in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So it's lightning fast. I mean, you could literally have probably 4 people working on the machine to keep
Yeah.
up with it because
Wow.
you got to fold and load them, and that takes a lot more time than filling it now because it only takes about 2 or 3 seconds to fill each bag.
Yeah.
So I mean that's my favorite, and the whole concept of dry bagging where you take the pellets and add the water, it just saves so much time opposed to batch mixing where you take
Yeah.
200 pounds of substrate, add the water, blend it in, mix it up, and then dispense it out. While there are advantages to that, I really prefer the dry bagging method. It works, and you still get great yields. You can still get 2 or 3 pounds per block,
Yeah.
per 10-pound block, which is more than enough mushrooms for making the sales.
Yeah. So it basically, you have each of them in a different like chute coming in, or is it mixed at the
Yes.
top? Okay.
So it's a split hopper where it has 2 sides to it, and there's a
Gotcha.
divider that runs down the middle. So you have the soybean hull and the fuel pellets, and then the water is kind of its own separate thing that comes in the side and gets injected very last. And that's all PVC with a built-in reservoir.
Yeah.
on the tank, and I'll shoot you the link for the video on that one in operation, but it's lightning fast.
Yeah.
I'm pretty damn sure it's the fastest mushroom bagging machine available on the market right now, without getting into the Chinese, like, $80,000
Yeah.
crazy computerized mushroom bagging machines.
Very cool. Very cool. That is and how long did that take you? How many iterations did you have before you had the final version?
Oh Lord. So just the valves alone, I think I had to make 6 different types of the valves. The hopper changed 3 times.
Okay.
And then I'm going on my 3rd manufacturer now, which is a different story, but yeah, so I have another,
Yeah.
Finding manufacturers for small run items like this is really hard.
Yeah.
That's a whole different conversation, but yeah, so it's constantly improving. The last 3 or 4 units that went out had improvements to where they had sight windows to where you could see when the material was running low. I added an adjustable rack, depending on what size bag you're filling. So, I mean, it's constantly developing, new improvements and all of that. But yeah, initially developing it took months. It took a lot of time and a lot of money. I paid a company to do the CAD drawings for me and all of that.
Yeah.
So that cost a pretty penny. And then I had it patent pending too, so that cost even more money.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a lot of time and a lot of money, but it's been doing well. It's been selling well. So a lot of people that have it love it. It's fast,
Yeah.
So,
Saving time.
Saving time, right? Most valuable thing we have.
Yeah. So where can people find out more about you and your work?
If you want to check out Myers Mushrooms, or myersmushrooms.com is my website. Yep. And I primarily sell bags right now because I'm deployed. So my wife is running that operation. And then if you go down to the bottom of my website, I have all the different, my Vimeo, I have my patreon.com if you want to support me, my YouTube, and then Bubba's Barrels. So that's the company that builds the sterilizers that I developed.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to have a large turnkey mushroom sterilizer, they can hit up Bubba's Barrels and get it from them. And yeah, that's pretty much all the ways you can get a hold of me, and you can always message me through my website. So.
Yes. Yeah. And we might find you just lurking around the mushroom growing group, which is where I met you.
Absolutely. So. Yes. Yeah. So a mushroom growing Facebook group, I'm an admin there. I think we just hit 100,000 members.
Oh, wow.
And, we have people from, growing in 5-gallon buckets in their backyard all the way up to, people with 7,000 square foot mushroom farms. So it's a good variety of different levels of experience.
Yeah.
And it's a good group of people. So
very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for coming on today. We appreciate your time, and best of luck, and hopefully you're coming home soon.
Thank you. Good talking to you too. Have a good one.
Hey, thriving farmers, and that is a wrap with Eric. So next week on the podcast will be the amazing composter and soil builder, Carl Hammer. So Carl Hammer is always a fun interview, and kind of in this interview, I just let him go. I asked a few questions and guided the conversation a bit, but it's a fabulous episode. My favorite quote is he says, "We don't make soil, we participate in mystery about how they do compost." He talks about how they ferment all the waste that comes on their farm before they feed it to their chickens, and then it goes into their compost production process. Talks about how he got started, all about their mixes on the farm, how they do that, how they use different barks and different products to build out their compost. So you're going to want to join me. It's a great interview, and one that I'm sure you'll want to listen to again. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.